majority of parents seem to be on side with the education workers.
Well, hello everyone.
At least back on November 6th.
This is another update. We're going right back to daily updates tonight. Not even the truth anymore. So here we are again. Are you really feeling like Groundhog Day at this point? I have not been here. I'm saying prepare for the possibility for the worst. So E2 last. Right, so we are going right back. I really feel like Ontario is going right back. It's going right back into another round of strikes. I don't know. I don't really feel confident that I believe that the government can reach an agreement Friday. Before Friday. Let me show you guys this. Yeah, let me show you guys this. Like, I can't believe we're back here again, but let's see what happens from here.
Education workers do their absolute best for students day in and day out. This government continues to ignore them.
Why are we in a
We're
position
back.
where kids
We're
can
around
be
the
in school?
clock.
Why are we here when we've done everything in good faith?
Here we go again. The war of words as the labor dispute intensifies. Ontario education workers set to strike again. Good afternoon. They've given notice. They plan to walk the picket lines in just 5 days' time.
The big question on the minds of parents: will schools be closed, forcing kids out of the classroom once again? CTV's Queen's Park reporter Siobhan Morris joins us live with the very latest on this developing story. Siobhan.
Well, it's only November, but it does sort of feel like Groundhog Day at this point. We are hearing from QP that there have been some improvements when it comes to the wages they've been asking for, but they're still not happy on where the government has moved on services.
CUPE members could again hit the bricks on Monday. The union representing 55,000 education workers serving notice of a potential walkout if they don't see movement at the bargaining table.
It will be a full strike on Monday. But our goal is to get a deal done. I think it's unfortunate that you have to serve notice before anyone believes you're serious.
The education minister calls the strike notice disappointing.
Kids now have to potentially pivot to virtual learning. This is not fair to children, to working parents, to our economy.
Walton says there is a win for wages, with the government offering $1 more per hour to all workers.
That amounts to $1,633 per year. To the average worker, because I know you all love percentages, it's about 3.59%.
A move the government says is worth over $335 million over the life of the deal.
We also said that we would offer a flat rate. We did that too. And the question is, why are we here? We did everything we said we would to workers and CUPE to get a deal that keeps kids in school.
But CUPE has other concerns.
This government refused to put a single cent into new student services. We wanted early childhood educators in every kindergarten class.
Plus support for EAs. After rescinding a bill that forced a contract on CUPE Monday, the education minister sidestepped questions about whether or not the government would use legislation again.
The government is going to stay at the table to get a deal. That is our obligation. That is our focus.
CUPE too says it still wants a deal.
The Toronto District School Board says it's still finalizing plans about what it would do if there is a strike on Monday, and that they'll share that plan with parents shortly or as soon as they can. But remember, last time there was a walkout by CUPE members, TDSB said there was just no feasible way to keep schools open and push learning online. Reporting live from Queen's Park.
I think we're heading for a repeat.
Thanks, Siobhan. And we will continue to monitor this story throughout the day, including what schools plan to do in the event another strike. Keep it at CTV.ca.
Yep. Hovering has once again resumed. You want to say that live daily coverage has once again resumed. we're back to daily live coverage. Which is something, and we do respect the workers actually. However, I'm really saying this that we could likely be out into spring. I am feeling that we might be in it on and off remote learning maybe throughout much of the year. So I really want to say we might have to prepare for the possibility that for Ray 8 Day we would be doing the same like we did last year. We would not be doing a performance. We would be doing a instead.
Another strike by education workers we now know could happen on Monday.
So for more on this, we are joined live now by Ontario Education Minister Stephen Lecce. Minister, thanks for joining us again. Obviously, this is not where any of us want to be. Can you talk about why CUPE is saying that this latest round of talks broke down, not necessarily because of the wages, it seems like you've come to a middle ground on that, but because she says, quote, it's a refusal to invest in services that students need and parents expect. What exactly is Laura Walton talking about in terms of services
I don't
here?
think teachers are doing well.
You know, first off, it is extremely disappointing and unfair on children that, again, the union has decided to put the province on a path to a strike. Remember what they asked us to do. We committed ourselves to repeal Bill 28. We did that. We committed ourselves
we're going to
not
keep
pay
going
our workers differently.
with
The
our
lower
daily
the higher, they
coverage
wanted a
again
flat wage. We did that.
through
They asked us to
Sunday
significantly
and then
increase wages for the lowest paid workers.
Over
We
that
put $335 million additional funding when you compare it to the legislated option before the legislature last week.
We'll be back to day
$335
5.
million more for the lowest paid workers, and they rejected that. This has always been about money. The union president said herself she wants a significant pay raise. We have provided a significant enhancement. And the question fundamentally, when we've repealed the bill, we've increased the wages, we've done a flat rate, and we're asking for no concessions by the union, what is this strike about? Why are we here? Why are kids potentially out of school? And so we are urging the union to stay at the table, work with the government and the mediator to get a deal that keeps kids in class. These children have been through enough, and it is wrong that every few weeks, ever so casually, strike notices are being children on their working parents and our economy. I hope they'll stay at the table. We can get a deal that keeps these kids in school.
Now, Minister, we know these 5-day sort of warnings or alerts about strike notices are kind of part of the process, but I want to talk about the process we've seen so far. It was just on Monday when your government repealed Bill 28 and the use of Section 33, the notwithstanding clause. What are your government plans this time around? Now we know that a potential strike is back on the table. Is it possible you could bring back something like you did 2 weeks ago, back to work legislation and the use of a notwithstanding?
Right now.
Well, you raise a good point. I mean, it was not even 48 hours ago today that the government repealed that bill. We did what we were asked to do. We have fulfilled our end of the bargain. We repealed the bill. We increased the wages. We added $335 million more.
Honestly, guys,
I mean, honestly, we have in good faith demonstrated to the people of Ontario, we want to get this right. We want to help our lowest paid workers, but we also want to keep the kids in school. That is what guides this government. Stability for children. They've been through so much. And so we're going to stay at the table. We've indicated that we will remain before the mediator with the aim over the coming days in this pressurized environment to try to provide a deal that keeps the kids in school, that's fair for the workers. What we've offered is a large increase of pay and a significant increase for the lowest paid workers in Ontario, which is what CUPE asked for, which is what they got.
Big note too.
Look, the government's been clear. We're going to negotiate, state that commitment, just repeal the bill, state the table, do the game, and not walk out on kids on Monday. I mean, these are not abstractions. We, in the media, as public servants, we can't speak about this casually. This strike creates such impact on kids, on their mental and physical health. It keeps them out of their schools. Special education kids are the ones that need routines. And I just think it's very unfair for children to have to go through this again. And it's unfair for their working parents to scramble for childcare. I just wish the union
Well, we're
understood that
back
the
to
strikes
daily,
on
we're back
families,
to around
on
the clock
kids,
coverage.
because of
Now, once
demand
again,
for higher wages is not acceptable.
long around
And the
the clock
government is
coverage.
making very clear we've offered much
Long
more,
around the
and we're
clock
going to stand
coverage.
firm to make sure these kids are in school.
Oh,
And I just hope
so
the
this
union will
is
stay
your,
at the table with us.
my
With
show
all due
ID.
respect, Minister, you didn't really say yes or no in
I don't
terms
think
of the
they heard.
notwithstanding clause, but I'm, interpreting
Come
that
on,
because you said
Dad.
you repealed it just so recently.
Honestly,
It's probably not going to go into effect anytime soon. However, I want to go back to that issue. CUPE specifically says this isn't about wages. We obviously cannot get to the specifics of it. We know it's 3.59% flat rate, as you said, but they said that negotiations fell apart because the province is refusing to provide specific services for students and that parents expect. So what exactly are those services that you're denying?
The union's going to have to explain to the people of Ontario why they're not accepting this enhanced offer. It's always been about wages. The union president said she wants a significant increase. She said that is the single priority that guides CUPE. For the government, it's about keeping kids in school. It's curious to hear it about the kids today. It was about wages up until last night. Let's not pretend otherwise. Let's not do this. Let's not pretend that this is about anything other than an increase of wages. You know this, and I know this. The people of Ontario know it. We increased wages by $335 million from last week alone. That's what's standing in the way. She criticized the dollar. I'm not confirming a number, but she went out there and said that's insufficient. And I mean, you all know what that percentage would mean. We're going to stay at the table, work through the mediator. We're not going to compromise the ability to get to a deal, which is why we're not going to disclose details. $335 million more dollars is on the table. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, what is this strike really about? I think most people know in their hearts what this is about. And I think they see it as an unfair imposition of a strike at a time when kids need to be in school, when that stability is so critical to their success. We just have EQAO data in this province confirming that there's a learning loss, there's a regression in reading, writing, and math. And so again, with a significant increase in salary, with a commitment to hire 1,800 more of their workers and 800 more teachers every single year, a commitment to maintain their benefits and the best pensions and 131 days of sick leave, we're asking the union to withdraw the strike and put these kids first for a change. Put kids first and keep them in the classroom.
Minister, you're coming out with some pretty strong messaging, obviously from the government side of this. About a week and a half ago when Bill 28 was first introduced, I know it's been repealed, but at that time there were a couple of public polls that showed a majority of the province was in fact on the side of the union and not necessarily taking the side of how the government was handling the situation here. Is your sense that perhaps public opinion is shifting and changing on this? I mean, the way you're speaking right now, the tone is different than it was just about a week and a half ago. Do you feel like the public is now taking more of the government side on this versus the union side?
Look, I'm not going to be guided by doing what's popular. We need to do what's right for kids. We need to stand up for children who have rights too. You know, they have been through so much in this province. They've been out of class. They are enduring mental health crisis. We are seeing physical regression. We're seeing social and emotional and reading and math scores plummet. I'm sorry, that is not fair. If this debate is about our kids, then the union will stay at the table. They will work with this government in good faith to get a deal, and they will never walk away from children who depend on them and us together to provide some stability for kids. And so my message is clear. We've offered more. We've done what they've asked. We revoked the bill. We increased their pay for the lowest paid workers, especially $335 million more in a week, a significant increase. And so they have the part two to this bargain.
to this deal, and it requires them to stay at the table and not walk out on kids, not impose hardship on the kids that need to be in school the most.
But let's say a strike does happen next Monday, which is something we all do not want. CUPE is saying that this is a strike that is not going to be rolling. They're going to, be on strike for as long as it takes. What's the government's plan here? Are you just going to sit at the table and wait until one side backs down?
Look, we're going to stay at the table with a commitment to get a deal. We're going to be focused and reasonable. We're going to, as we've done, we've increased their pay. We've maintained the best benefits, the best pensions, 131 days of sick leave. We're now adding $335 million more. We know what this strike is about, and it's unfair for kids. So we're going to stay with the remediator. We're going to work in good faith to get a deal. I hope the union will do the same. Our kids, their certainty, their mental, physical, and academic health depends on us being the adults in the room. So we will remain focused on getting a deal. We're never going to walk away from the table. We're never going to walk out on kids. In the meantime, we're going to make sure that children and schools are ready to pivot to virtual learning if required, should the union continue to strike, because they demand even higher pay above the $335 million we've offered. I really hope we can get a deal for the sake of our children. And I know many parents are depending on the union, the government, the trustees coming together for the sake of kids.
Minister, is CUPE overstepping or sort of going above its pay grade, as it were, in its asks beyond the financial requests of, increased wages, et cetera? Jennifer's mentioned this a couple of times, but what students and parents expect, is that beyond what CUPE should be negotiating about? Is that your position?
My position is that we just revoked the bill 2 days ago, which they said was the purpose of the last strike. So we revoked the bill. They earned. We increased their pay last week, and we did it again as per our offer through the mediator yesterday. And every step of the way, when we've done the right thing in good faith, as we said we would, the union said it's not enough. And they want more, much more, when we've offered an increase of $335 million. Just from a week, we're talking about in 1 week, that's the enhancement to our offer for these workers, especially the lowest paid, who we're trying to help out as much as we can, is why their wages will be increased significantly every single year for 4 years. We're maintaining the benefits and the pensions and the sick leave and all these benefits and entitlements that, frankly, most people in the private economy don't have. Many people watching today won't have job security and pensions and benefits and all those sick leaves, but they do within our schools. And so we're going to continue to maintain that very generous program. We're going to increase their wages even more than we did last week. We need the union to put kids first, to come and stay at the table and never walk away from children. I think the hardship they impose on kids is real. And I just, honestly, I think we're all just exacerbated by this. How are we still here? On every request they have made of government, we have moved. And now they are demonstrating what this really is about. And I think that's really unfair. And I can't imagine how this is going to impact a lot of parents out there. And I'm just going to work very hard, twice as hard, do everything humanly possible to keep the kids in school.
Hello, Mueller.
Well, I guess definitely sense your passion and frustration today, parents. So we're just praying that a deal can be reached before strike action happens. Appreciate your time, Education Minister Stephen Lecce.
Cut you off. Minister Lecce speaking.
We increased our offer lower income workers significantly. We repealed the bill. We've been at the table in good faith, demonstrating a commitment to the lowest paid workers and a commitment to parents to keep their kids in school. And yet today they have decided again to put the province on a 5-day notice. I think it is entirely unfair to children. It's unnecessary. We should be having these discussions at the table to get a deal for her members and for our kids. And I think we're all very disappointed that this is the path the union has taken, but this government will
stay resolved and stay focused at the table to get a deal, especially knowing that we've offered a better option with more money, significant increase, hundreds of millions of dollars more for lower paid workers.
Are you saying that you did come to an agreement on the wages part, but there were other parts you didn't agree on? Can you elaborate on what the sticking points are? What are they asking for that you're not willing to give them?
First off, I want to appreciate that the mediator has requested a level of discretion. I still want to get a deal. I don't want to prejudice that outcome. What I can confirm to you is their ask was that the lowest paid worker in this province gets more support and higher income. We have significantly increased our offer for lower paid workers. We did that. We actually did it multiple times, each and every time it was rejected. And I think that is very unfair. And as I noted, it is unnecessary that we're in this place again, that kids now have to potentially pivot to virtual learning. This is not fair to children, to working parents, to our economy. And I believe the union should be at the table, focused at getting a deal that is fair for workers, but most importantly, preserves the in-person learning experience for children. So we've offered more. We fulfilled our end of our commitment to withdraw the bill, to increase the wages, and to act in good faith. And I would ask the union to come and stay at the table so that we can get a deal.
Just to be clear, there is or there is not back to work legislation in the works, sir?
The government is going to stay at the table to get a deal. That is our obligation. That is our focus. We want a negotiated settlement with the union. And we made very clear, we have increased the offer. We have significantly increased our salary offer for the lowest paid worker, as we said we would. We removed and revoked the bill. We did everything we said in good faith to get a deal. And I think we're all asking the same question, why we're here today. How is it possible after significantly increasing wages multiple times, repealing legislation, staying at the table and acting in good faith, we're in a position where children, again, may be out of class with their lives disrupted and that of their parents. I just think it's entirely unnecessary and frankly, it's unacceptable.
They've talked about wanting a $1 per hour increase rather than like a 2-tiered percentage increase. Is that still a problem? And why is that a problem?
I will note that our offer is fair. It increases wages for all workers with an emphasis on the lowest paid workers, a significant increase for lower paid workers. That has always been the priority. But look, I think the government's position is that we're going to continue to stay at the table, be reasonable and focused on our kids. They have paid such a price of pandemic disruptions and strikes, and we have to ensure that kids stay in school because this is an unnecessary strike. It's an unfair strike on so many children they're contemplating, especially given that the government significantly increased wages for lowest paid workers, revoked the bill. We did everything we said we would. And so I think, for many of us, when we were made aware of this plan last night, I think we came to the same conclusion that this is both unnecessary, unfair, and we're all sort of posing the question, why? Why are we here? We did everything we said we would do.
So, Minister, this is just a 5-day notice, though. Isn't this a signal that it's time for the hard bargaining to begin?
We've been in intensive negotiations over the past several days, certainly since we returned to the table this past week. We've been working in good faith with the mediator. We believe there is a deal on the table. Of course, we need the union to work with us to get a deal that keeps kids in school, that ends this unnecessary disruption. And I want families to know that we're going to remain at the table with one mission, which is land a deal that keeps your kids in school.
So there's still some wiggle room then? There's still some wiggle room for you?
We're going to remain at the table. We've offered is very reasonable. It is a significant increase for lowest paid workers. It was hundreds of millions of additional incremental dollars. Exactly what the Premier said we would do, we have done. We revoked the bill. We massively increased that spending, a significant increase for lower paid workers. And the union has decided today, notwithstanding all those supports and increases, they've decided to proceed on a strike. And I think that is entirely unfair for so many children. This government is going to stay at the table to get a deal. And I hope the union will do the same.
Last question.
Question. You were with Bill 28 on Monday. Now you find yourself in the same position you were in, even after offering, as you say, more money. Were you outmaneuvered by the union here?
Look, I think what we have discovered is that after doing our end of the bargain, after withdrawing the bill, offering more money for the lowest paid workers, the union is still committed to a strike. And I think that is really concerning when we know the impacts on children of disruptions from a mental and physical and academic perspective. They are not part of the discussion often from the union side. They need to start reflecting on how these disruptions impact working people and their kids. And it shouldn't be a casual thing you do every other week. We offered more. We increased our wages for the lowest paid worker with hundreds of millions of dollars on the table. And the union has decided to proceed in the strike. And I think the question we're asking ourselves is, why are we in a position where kids may be out of school? Why are we here when we've done everything in good faith, following through on our commitments? And I want families to know that we will stand strong, stay at the table, and work to get a deal that keeps kids in the classroom. Thank you all.
Let's now have Laura Walton, who is going to be speaking about the potential walkout that's going to happen on Monday. Let's listen in.
The day we serve notice to the government to bargain. A lot has happened in that time and a lot has changed, but not everything though. My message then was the same as my message today. It's been consistent the entire time. Education workers need a wage that keeps them out of poverty. Students need improved services to thrive in the classroom. Those are the two planks of the deal we've been pursuing for over 5 months. From the very beginning, I've been clear. We're fighting for student success and good jobs. We've never been willing to sacrifice one for the other. I want to remind you why we're here today. My 55,000 co-workers are the backbone of Ontario's public education system. Without us, schools wouldn't function. Without us, students wouldn't learn. We're the education workers who were on site all throughout the pandemic. We are the education workers who look after the mental health and safety of students. We are the education workers who keep our schools clean, safe, and operational. We're also the lowest paid education workers in the province. So when we asked for a raise to keep education workers out of food banks, to make sure we can heat our homes, to guarantee we can provide for our own families, I had hoped that this government would have recognized our value and our worth. They did not. They have money in the coffers with about $2.1 billion surplus, but they refused to give my coworkers a decent raise. So we served notice to strike on October 30th. How did the government respond to a workforce that's 70% women and makes on average $39,000 a year, exercising their chartered protected rights? They gave us an ultimatum. Back down or face the full weight of the provincial government. We don't abide bullies in the classroom, so I'm not going to allow one at our bargaining table. When we wouldn't back down, they legislated us. They used the notwithstanding clause as a sledgehammer to smash our rights and impose collective agreements that would have forced more of us to the food bank. I'm so proud that my coworkers pushed back. It took tremendous courage, but we weren't alone. Our allies across the labor movement showed up for us. And parents filled our protest lines as though, like we do, that the status quo in our schools is not okay. The power of workers and families forced this government to back down, proving that while they have a majority in the legislature, they do not have a majority in the province. The majority of Ontarians want good schools. The majority of Ontarians want education workers to be able to put gas in their car without having to work a second job. The majority of Ontarians believe that students deserve every support and every chance to thrive and develop. That's why it was so crushingly disappointing after the groundswell of support that led to the lightning fast repeal of Bill 28 to get back to the table and see the government's offer. After hearing that powerful majority of the government stick our head in the sand. After hearing for parents desperate for investments in our schools, parents chose to leave their friends who continue to whisper in their ears about the path to privatization. I want to lay out what government offer contained and what it did not. They offered my coworkers a $1 raise per hour for each year of our collective agreement. That amounts to $1,133 a year. To the average worker, I know you wages 3.59%. And let me be clear, that's a win for workers, but it's not enough. It's not nearly what we deserve for the care and effort and incredible passion we put into our jobs. And it's certainly not enough to make up for a decade of having the government's hands in our pockets through legislative interference in our collective bargaining province. But it is more than the government wanted to give us, and it only happened because custodians, early childhood educators, educational assistants, office workers, maintenance workers, trades, library workers, and so many more realized our power. It only happened because my coworkers and our incredible allies made it happen. So while it's not enough, a $1 an hour raise is a win for wages. But way back 167 days ago, I told you this was never just about wages. And that is my message again today. This fight started with a focus on services for students. Parents swelled our lines to demand better for their children, and we're not prepared to back down now. We will not abandon parents just because Doug Ford waves a loonie in our face. We are not that easily bought, nor that easily distracted. We have asked, we've implored, we have practically begged. This government refused to put a single cent into new student services. We wanted early childhood educators in every kindergarten class. We wanted EAs supporting not just students with special needs, but having the appropriate time to do so. We wanted every student to have every possible opportunity to grow and achieve. This government said no over and over. And while he's saying no to students, Doug Ford found money for other things. Just this week, he found money to extend a tax cut that's going to cost $1.2 billion so that people can save a few pennies at the pump. I guess he cares about cars and highways that no one wants more than he does about kids' education or our province's healthcare system. I want to address something that Stephen Lecce has called out. He has tried to attack our coworkers for the hours that we work. The way he frames it, we're sitting back cashing in on part-time jobs. The way he frames it, we have the same relaxed work whenever we want schedule that he enjoys in the legislature, with months off every year and a six-figure salary. The reality is my coworkers are desperate for more hours. The reality is if we had more hours, we'd be able to offer better services. The reality is that this government has refused to increase our hours, further jeopardizing students. So my coworkers have served notice. And I know what this government is going to say. It's a line as old as time. They're going to call us greedy. Don't buy that line. $1 is a move in the right direction after a decade of stagnated wages. $1 is a move in the right direction after seeing our real dollar earnings drop by more than 11%. It's a move in the right direction when so many of us live in poverty, work second jobs, and rely on food banks. There's something this government does not seem to understand. We love our jobs. We love the students in our schools, and we absolutely want what's best for them. So they're going to call us greedy, and they're going to say that we've been on a warpath to strike. But parents, like me and so many of us up here, we know the truth. Parents know that it is my coworkers who showed up at schools throughout the pandemic when everyone else stayed at home. Parents know that it's my coworkers who look out for their children when they can't be with them themselves. Parents know that while education workers do their absolute best for students day in and day out, this government continues to ignore them and underfund our schools and lie to the public. Parents showed up for us for all of these reasons and more, and I want to take a second to say something directly to the parents watching right now. Our entire 55,000 person strong membership is grateful for your support. We are not going to let this government overlook your children anymore. We are in this fight for you. I'll be honest, this isn't where I wanted to be. My co-workers hoped to accept our reasonable, affordable, and necessary proposals 167 days ago. We hoped they would recognize the urgency of our workers' plea when we held our historic strike vote. We hoped that they would respond to last week's show of parent and worker solidarity. I've been disappointed at every turn by a government that categorically refuses to invest in our schools and prioritize our students. I'm so proud of my coworkers for doing the hard thing and for standing up for what is right, what is needed, and what is just. We have 5 days before this strike notice period expires. That is 5 days for this government to recognize the opportunity that they have to make a difference in the lives of 2 million Ontario students. 5 days. And then education workers, parents, and every ally who cares about young people and public education in this province will make their voices heard once more. I urge the Ford government to seize the time we have and do the right thing. Come forward with a deal that truly helps students catch up. I'm now going to turn it over to Mark Hancock, National President of CUPE.
Great, thank you, Laura. And I'm here with Candace Rennick, our National Secretary Treasurer. And before I get into my comments, I want to thank all of the people up on stage with me, the members of the bargaining committee of the OSBCU. You know, it's thankless work quite often, and this group of leaders has shown incredible leadership and understanding of what our members are going through across the province. I want to thank all of you personally for that work. So let me start off by saying nobody's exactly sure what's going to happen over the next few days, but we do know a few things for certain. We know that our 55,000 members in the education sector across Ontario, out of all of them, not one of them wants to go on. It's never worked in their classes than walking a picket line. I can tell you that much. Another thing we know for certain is how deeply all of our members care about public education in this province. They care deeply that every kid in our school has their needs met. They care that every school is clean and safe and a good place to learn. They care that every kid has the support that they need in class to succeed and to thrive. And let's acknowledge that good quality public education costs money. Families, parents, and workers all agree in this province it's worth it because it's for our kids. And we also know that underfunding education has its own price. And that cost doesn't just show up in the ledger at the provincial legislature. That cost is reflected elsewhere. We see the cost of underfunding when we help vulnerable kids, when we see that they aren't getting what they need in schools. We see the cost of underfunding when there aren't enough staff to keep schools safe and clean. We see the cost of underfunding when we look at the people who look after our kids at school, and they have to get a second or a third job, and they still have to utilize food banks across this province. When this government underfunds education, it's the kids and the workers who look after them that pay the price. We're standing here today because that has to stop. I've said this before, but I'll mention it again. CUPE isn't just the largest union in Ontario. We're the largest and strongest union in Canada. When this government tries to bully 55,000 education workers here in Ontario, all 715,000 members across this country will have their back. And as we said all along, we're going to back Laura, this committee, and our 55,000 education workers all the way to the finish line until they get a deal that works for everyone. That is exactly what kids, what parents, and workers in this province deserve. And we're going to stand by and make sure that they get it. Our committee and our union remains ready to get this deal done and find our way to an agreement that works for parents, for kids, and for workers. Thank you. Next is Fred Hahn, President of CUPE Ontario.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Fred Hahn. I'm the president of CUPE Ontario, and joining me on stage is our Secretary Treasurer, Yolanda McLean. Let me start by saying I'm disappointed, but not surprised that we've ended up here. The government appears to have squandered the opportunity that was created by the goodwill of parents, the community, CUPE education workers, our labor allies, by failing to use the time properly between November the 7th and today to negotiate a good and fair deal for the people who represent who are the backbone of our education system. Our members do amazing work. To our members who work in schools, I want you to know your work is valuable. People know how important you are, and that work deserves to be recognized. The OSBCU, our bargaining council, has done amazing work. To the bargaining council, to the bargaining committee on stage behind me, thank you for the courage and leadership you provided through this difficult process. I also want to say again to parents, echoing what both Mark and Laura have said, CUPE members are parents too. They understand how important our schools are to their kids. They don't take any of the actions that we've been taking of late and that we're announcing today lightly. Our members, 55,000 education workers, are doing this to protect services for students, for your children and theirs. To the Council of Trustees Association, I want to say that there is still time to make a deal that ensures that there are services for students and to make sure that kids can stay in school. There's 5 days. You know, as well as our members do, how important the work of CUPE education workers are and what's needed in our schools to help kids succeed. To Premier Ford and Minister Lecce, we have to make sure that when you make claims of having parents and families' interests above all things, that it makes sure that you're actually prioritizing their needs. That means prioritizing the needs of these workers. It means making sure that we can prioritize good wages and investments in services above tax cuts, above protecting corporate profiteers, around trying to mess around with the books to make it sound like there's a deficit when the Financial Accountability Officer just a few weeks ago said clearly there was a $2.1 billion surplus. To our friends in the labor movement and to the public in general, your solidarity and support have meant a great deal. It's helped our members, who are the real leaders in this fight, move mountains.
Last time you were here was in November of this year.
I need you to apply the same pressure to government to tell them that students need and deserve these, that parents need these supports in our schools, that education workers need and deserve a good deal so that they can continue to deliver the high quality services and supports students need for their education. I want to encourage everyone to do everything they can to use these 5 days to be in touch with your MPP, to talk directly if you can to them, to the minister, to the premier. There's a way to do that, an easier way to do that. On our website, we have an e-action. You can send a direct message to the premier. You can check that out at qp.on.ca. But more importantly, spend the next 5 days with us, doing everything we can to help the government to see that there is a path here that can respect workers and their work, that can invest in the important services that students need to succeed, that can actually have a path forward, be good for students, for parents, and for education workers. Thank you.
Breaking news, Ontario's education minister says CUPE is getting ready to walk off the job again. In a statement this morning, Stephen Lecce says, "We are disappointed that only a few short days after talks restarted, CUPE has filed notice to once again shut down classrooms. Since resuming talks, we have put forward multiple improved offers that would have added hundreds of millions of dollars across the sector, especially for lower income workers. CUPE has rejected all of these offers. We are at the table ready to land a fair deal that invests more in lower income workers and keeps kids in class."
The head of the union representing education workers will be holding a press conference in a couple of hours' time.
Laura Walton and the national president of CUPE, Mark Hancock, will speak to the media about the ongoing negotiations between them and the province. The two sides have been back at the bargaining table for over a week now, following a short stalemate that saw education workers walk off the job for 2 days. The province had said they came back to the table with a better deal that included more money for the lowest wage earners, but the union says it won't agree to a two-tiered increase in salary.
Educate need improved services. The 5 months. From the very beginning, we're fighting for student success and good jobs. We've never been willing to sacrifice one for the other. I want to remind you why we're here today. Are the backbone of Ontario. With us,
there is a path here that can respect workers and their work, that can invest in the important services that students need to succeed, that can actually have a path forward that will be good for students, for parents, and for education workers. Thank you.
and questions.
Last week, you basically talk. So why are you doing this act now? Is it premature?
It's not premature. I mean, talk in earnest. I mean, let's be honest, it was sizing each up. But we had two full, last night was, you know, late last night was when decisions were being made, and we tried. We tried everything we possibly could. But what they want to do is give us the deal that they gave us back in 2019 with $1 on it and call it over. And we're saying, listen, we know that kids need services. Why are you not investing in those? Why are you putting more money into paying out parents in bribes than you are putting services directly in front of our students? I mean, your PayPal on private tutoring that says this isn't working. And yet we just need them to put the money in place so that people could have more EA support, more ECE support. And they're saying no.
But given wages are all often the most contentious issue, and it seems like you've come to middle ground, you say you've come to middle ground on wages. Are you okay with what the government's offering? And why not stay at the table and try and hammer out these other issues, which typically are secondary to wages?
So we have made moves, they have made moves, but this has never been just about money. That's what the premier and the minister want you to believe. This is all about money. And this is heard that is happening now for our children. We don't have enough in the schools keeping them clean because that money. So, well, yes, we need a wage increase. Every single one of our members is working for free, overtime, working to their ends of their days, trying to keep up because this government doesn't want to invest. Imagine how healthy our children would be, how caught up they would be if the government invested directly in our schools instead of putting it out to profiteers.
Laura, let's go ahead. What does Monday look like? What should parents be preparing for? Is this going to be a full strike if nothing happens?
It will be a full strike on Monday. But our goal is to get a deal done. I think it's unfortunate that you have to serve notice before anyone after we have to get to this point before the government understands. We have been told where the ways are going to be. The workers decided, not the bargaining team. Remember, once a deal is in place, it'll be kind of a full package for the workers to ratify. But what's missing before we can even get to that point is absolutely no new services for our children. And that has always been part of what we've been working towards. A wage increase doesn't help if you're going to lose your job. A wage increase isn't going to help when you have school boards that are finding ways to get rid of people. A wage increase isn't going to help if your hours get cut. It's a full package. That will be determined by the members.
But in terms of what your bargaining committee is going to recommend,
we aren't recommending anything. Would have a tentative agreement.
Can you just elaborate a little bit on the services? What are you talking about exactly here? This is the impasse. Describe to me what the issues is.
Absolutely. I can't wait to actually describe it because I can go into great detail. With our little ones, literally the majority of pandemic. There are kindergarten classes that don't have a DCE in them, which is the cornerstone of the play-based learning structure that we have, because it saves money to do an SK1 split. We need an early childhood educator in every single class in this province. Let's talk about EA supports. You know, just today I got received from a mom, you know, an update that she is still sitting outside of a school in Toronto Catholic District School Board because there's yet to be an EA provided to her daughter who requires personal care supports in order to attend school. So that mom is sitting outside of the school so that her daughter can text and say, hey, mom, can you come in and help me eat? Hey, mom, can you come in and help me use the washroom? What dignity is there in that? Why are we not investing in? Why are we investing in private tutoring when there are multitudes of EAs and other staff that can do those supports? Let's talk about custodians, maintenance, trades. Right now, we are in a crisis when it comes to children and illnesses. Where do you think they're catching them? They're catching it at school. Did you know that the money for the enhanced cleaning is gone? That it was never put towards any of our people to do that work? And did you know that the enhanced cleaning money only really worked out to a day? I don't know if any of you have been in a school with a lot of little ones. We need more people there. We work in the schools. We see the state of our schools. And we know that parents are clamoring for services. And yet this government claims that they can't possibly do this. We asked for 100 million. They paid out 385 million in bribes directly to parents.
Laura, 2 days ago, after Bill 28 was repealed, I asked you about this very possibility, and you said that it would have to be in response to something. But it seems like there has been at least some progress. So what precisely is this kind of, extreme step in response?
The response
Yeah.
is because of the government's unwillingness to invest in the services that children, students, families, and our workers need.
And what do the next 5 days look like before Monday?
We are ready. We are
Still
here.
negotiating as well?
We're not going to stop. We haven't ever stopped, right? We've been here. Some of us have been here. I haven't been home in 6 weeks. We're dedicated to get this deal done. But we have said all the way along, a deal would be done when there was a wage that met what the workers needed and provided the services that students and families deserve. This isn't just about union workers wanting more money in their pockets. This is about them wanting to be able to do their jobs. And I don't understand why this government cannot see through to the fact that this is a win-win-win for everyone, for workers, for families, and for this province. Mediator's been not too pleased with me several times in my career.
So are you going to continue talking?
I'll be okay.
Are you going to keep talking like this Sunday?
Absolutely, we're going to keep talking. And listen, I don't envy a mediator. You've got a whole lot of strong personalities that you're going back and forth. It's probably not the easiest job in the world. It's a flat rate of $1.
So the government has backed off the two tiers and they've offered one?
$1
Per year.
per hour per year.
Yes, but.
Yeah, a dollar a year is not going to cut it, but yes.
So that was some progress, right?
Absolutely.
From what, the last 36 hours?
So imagine how quickly this deal could get done if we just put some money into services.
So is this a bit of a pressure tactic? You're hoping for a $11 deal like 2019? Or
There's always going to be pressure tactics when you're negotiating. Obviously, there's not enough right now, or else it would be done. This could have been settled last night. We could have been standing in this room today announcing that there was a deal we were going to be taking to our members.
so how many the services you need, for example, in an early childhood education, how many do you need to get to where you want to be? Like how far away are
I believe when we looked into it, it was about $38 million would pay for a DECE in every classroom in the province of Ontario. Yeah. And it changes every year, right? Depending on how many little ones come in.
Laura, you've been all along that this is not just about the money, and we hear that often with negotiations, and it's a lot of times it's just posturing. But by you not accepting this raise of 3.59% and looking out for the children, I really think it goes to the credibility of you and your bargaining team when you are prepared, given that the majority of your workers are the lowest paid, 2/3 are women, most likely struggling, most likely with children, some of them perhaps single moms, some living in marginalized communities, but you're so concerned about your kids that you're prepared to walk away from the dollar aspect of this. Can you speak to that and how that goes to your resolve and I would say the credibility of your union when you sit down at a negotiating table? Because you could put the money in your pocket, out the door you go, but the kids are still suffering, and that's not enough for you. So can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it speaks to not just the bravery of this group behind us, but the 55,000 people back at home who understand that our working conditions are children's learnings. And if we're going to take to this, it has to be going like this more in this, where we keep cutting away at public services, education, but tomorrow it could be healthcare. You know, the next day it could be social services. There are people depending on this. And perhaps because we're some of the most marginalized, we recognize than anyone just how much of a cornerstone public education is when we talk about equity in our communities. Schools provide services that often are not available to folks who are marginalized. We keep the world fair, and that's what we should be doing. We should not be running into this, let's privatize this, let's privatize the next thing. Publicly funded, publicly delivered education is the cornerstone of our civilization. And I am so proud of our members for standing up and saying, it's time to pay attention to what the kids need.
Do you get the sense, and this may be an open-ended question, do you get the sense that during the negotiation, again, I go back to the 2/3 of your members being female, but I think that's concerning when you just look at society in general, where you have oftentimes women working those low-paying jobs, 2-3 jobs, the community's raising their children, they may be in poor relationships. Do you get the sense that the other side of the bargaining table understands that, and that by denying some simple rights, even denying your people the right to strike, do you think they get that? And do you think they get the importance of what you're asking for the students in school?
I would like to hope they get it. I would like to hope that people understand and they always have that at their base. But I think what's happening is right now we live in a society that's driven by the almighty dollar. And when you start trying to monetize education, you start trying to monetize students, you kind of lose that human touch. And so I encourage, the premier, I encourage the minister, let's sit down and talk about this. Because I know that Doug Ford in his heart is for the little guy, is for the little gal. I know that that's who he is. And now is the time I call on, let's walk together, put a lot about Davis house the other day. Bill Davis did have a legacy of actually working for public education as a conservative premier. Doug Ford can.
So with the 5-day notice that you're adding, the last time you did it, it seemed like that was like the line in the sand for the want to continue negotiating. Do you have a sense from them this time?
Well, I heard that Minister Lecce said that he was ready to negotiate, that he was at the table, not the table he's at, but he lets me know where he is. I'll head that way.
Laura, just very quickly to clarify, rotating strike on Monday or permanent?
Full out.
Full out strike. Yeah. And can
I'll head way.
Laura, just very quickly to clarify, rotating strike on Monday or permanent?
Full out.
Full out strike. Yeah. And can I ask you one last question with regards to that notwithstanding clause? Your 55,000 members push back. Mm-hmm. And for the lack of a better term, they blinked because they took that legislation off the table. If that legislation is to be implemented because of the defiance of the legislation, it requires for heavy fines on the lowest paid workers, number one. But government does that, you look like a bully. If the requirement is heavy paid fines and you don't do it, the government looks toothless. So are you not in a better negotiating position now, because that notwithstanding clause can still be put forward, but is anybody really going to enforce that on your workers, do you think?
I don't think it's in anyone's best interest to try and strip away the charter rights of people ever again. I think there was a clear message sent, not just from us, not just from our labor allies, not just from this province, but literally across the country and even around the world, saying enough is enough. So, I think I think that message has been heard loud and clear. This is normal bargaining, right? It's not unusual for people to serve notice to strike. What's unusual is giving the 5 days, but that's because that's what we need in legislation. But you know what? It's time. We're at the table. We're ready to go. We need the services. Let's get them in place.
Lastly, promise you, last question. No clause then, that's not a deterrent for you. Or your member.
Country, I think it's there's always a worry. We are the ones sitting in hockey arenas together. We are the ones sitting at the bus pickup together. We are the ones waiting at the daycare to grab our children together. We're talking together, and we're all saying the same thing. This government, and we as CUPE believe in protecting services. We believe in protecting children and protecting workers. We're going to keep doing.
Laura, a lot of the unions behind you.
Flies in here.
Exactly, we're having fun. That was in part, and then I think large of having Bill 28. Have you received assurances that the same groups will support you if you go on strike now and the government does not use such heavy-handed legislation?
I think it's comparing like a match, right? That was only the catalyst. That's what started the fire going. The fire didn't go out just because the notwithstanding clause came off. In fact, what has happened is a resurgence. On Monday, we will not be the only possible CUPE local in Ontario heading out on to the picket line.
Who else will be?
We could have several. I was going to say Canadian Hearing Society, University of Toronto. I believe there's a local in Niagara as well.
In support of yourselves?
No, so we're at the bargaining table, and they're taking the same moves because that's what people in labor have started to realize. That's what workers and people have started to realize is that you can now crawl out of your apathy and use your voice and push back. You don't have to settle. You don't have to settle for less than you deserve. That collectively, we are always going to be stronger, and we will be there for them, and they will be here for us.
So they're also adding their 5 days.
They don't have to do 5 days. It's only in the education sector that there has to be 5-day notice. There's other unions across this province all the time going on strike. And what I'm saying is people have started to recognize through what we saw 2 weeks ago, 2 years, look at me, 2 weeks ago, that there's power in the people. There's power in exercising your rights. There is power for standing up for yourself. And I think that that is absolutely terrific. And we don't just see it in unions. We're seeing it in parents groups, in activists. We're seeing it right now fighting back on the green belt. People are coming together to say no. And I am all here for it.
But you,
For as long as it takes. All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right, yeah, I have to go. So see you guys later. Bye.